Hello book nerds, this is Gabby and today I am feeling a little sick, so I'm sorry about my voice, but fantasy waits for nothing. The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. This is book 1 in the First Law Trilogy and my first grimdark book ever. I wasn't really sure if I was going to like this book. I usually prefer a little more light-hearted books, a little happier ones, but I did love this one. This book was a buddy read that we started in March with David from David's Book Reviews. I will link his channel in the description for you to check him out because he's an amazing person, he's an amazing booktuber. His content is really good. He loves fantasy, he loves horror mainly. He's a really die-hard Stephen King fan, so if you like Stephen King, I really recommend you to watch his videos. So before jumping in my review, let's go and hear what David has to say.
Hi guys, recently me and Gabby have been doing a buddy read on Joe Abercrombie's The Blade Itself, which is the book 1 in his First Law Trilogy, and I was extremely excited to get into this novel. This was my first ever step into grimdark novels, and I wasn't really sure about what to expect, but I did expect to have a really dark and moody universe and world, and that's what I actually got in this novel. This world is really dark, unforgiving, and it doesn't take any prisoners. And because this is a grimdark book, there really isn't any hero characters within this book or any good guys. There are certain characters that have got better intentions than others, but the majority of the characters within this book are more or less grey characters. I did actually like the fact that I was kind of rooting for what is classified as a bad guy, such as Glotter. I absolutely loved him to bits. How he was like skulking around and all mopey, and he was in constant pain and agony all the time, and I just felt empathy for this character. Even though he could easily stab you in the back at a drop of a hat, I find him so interesting as a character. Although this story wasn't like a heavily plot-based story, this is more of a character-driven story, but I have heard that the second novel, which me and Gabby are going to be doing a buddy read on, has got a more coherent plot, rather than this one is more of a novel which introduces you to this world and these characters. So with all that said, let's go straight back to Gabby now with her video.
Thanks, David, and if you want to hear his more in-depth thoughts, I will link his video in the description for you to check it out as well. I don't know if this is the best way to start a review, but I have to say it. The Blade Itself feels like a setup book. Feels like Joe Abercrombie wanted to show us, to present us his characters for us to get to know them better and get attached to them before starting telling us the actual story. And he does it in a really fantastic way. We don't really know so much about the story. The plot is almost non-existent and the world building is pretty vague, although we know that it is gritty, it is dark and brutal. Quick warning, if you're triggered by violence, blood, brutality, torture, and slavery, I don't know if I recommend you this book. The only thing we get from the actual story is that there's a war brewing between this kingdom called the Union and the Northern one, and they're sort of fighting for some territories. But that's about it. We mostly follow our three main characters, Logan Ninefingers, who is a northern barbarian who's just trying to survive. He has a really dark past and dark reputation that he sort of wants to get rid of. Logan is used to live in the wild, he doesn't like to be surrounded by too many people, and his motivations are pretty much staying alive. And then we've got Sant'Anglota, who in my personal opinion is the most interesting character in the entire book. He's a former swordsman and ladiesman. He used to fight for the Union, but after some events, he was left crippled and joined the Inquisition. He tortures people now. Then we've got Jessel Luthor, who is this sort of petty noble, really full of himself. He wants to prove everyone that he is the best. He loves to look at himself in the mirror and admire his perfect chin. But to be honest, his point of view were my least favorite in the entire book. Those are our three main characters, and there's another one that is really important. That's Bias, the first of the Magi. He is an old wise wizard with a really bad temper that is in the midst of everything, and his role is fundamental for what is to come later in the series, I think. So you might think that these are really tropey fantasy characters like the old wizard, the barbarian, the petty noble, but the depth that Abercrombie adds to them is so unique and so cool that you immediately get invested with them. You start rooting for them even though they're really bad people. We don't really follow a hero here. We don't follow a good guy. Everyone here has a really questionable moral, and I think that's really interesting. These characters don't have the usual motivations we see in fantasy, whereas is thirst of power or revenge or need for justice or over the top loyalty to someone. No, they feel like real people. They feel flawed. They are really flawed, but they are not evil just for the sake of it. They are all the time questioning themselves, why they're doing what they're doing. I really appreciate Joe Abercrombie's take on the morality of these characters, how morally gray they are, because they are product of this world. This world is brutal. This world is violent. This world is unforgiving. And that's what leads our characters to be where they are and who they are. There are quite few scenes that show this, and they're so subtle and beautifully done, because you can see characters killing other people, and that is awful, but you cannot really blame them because that's the way the world works. You cannot do anything else in this situation, and it's the writing of these characters is really incredible because they have a distinct voice, and that's exactly what I look for in characters. You can have a doom and gloom of Logan, or the cynical monologue of Glocta, or the pretentiousness that we see in Jessel. You can see it in the first 3 lines of every chapter, which point of view we are following here. And in a side note, still praising Joe Abercrombie's writing here, is that when I got into this book and I knew it was grimdark, I expected to see a really gloomy scenario all the time. And the author proved me wrong. He showed me that the world, even though it's darker than most, it has a lot of layers, and they're really heartfelt moments, really funny moments. I found myself laughing quite a few times. I found myself feeling for the characters even though they were doing really bad things. Joe Abercrombie's writing may not be the most poetic or lyrical one, but it's beautiful in its bluntness, because he doesn't embellish you anything. He tells you the things right how they are in a fantastic way that you can picture it easily, and I loved it for that. Still, this book is not perfect. I rated it 4 stars out of 5 in Goodreads because of the almost non-existent plot and the vague world building that, although I think is intentional, still bothered me. And there are a couple characters that I didn't mind so much, like Pharaoh, but that's a preference thing. I am really looking forward to start reading the second novel with David this month, because I think this series has so much potential. I already love the characters deeply, even though they're not people I would like to meet in real life. So I'm really excited to see where the actual story is gonna take us. I hope you like this video. I would love to keep chatting with you about the book in the comments. Let me know what you think of it, if you've read it, if you want to read it, what you think about grimdark and Joe Abercrombie's works. I would love to know your opinions. And yes, if you want to stay tuned, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, ring the bell, and click on the subscribe button. I will be posting on Mondays and Thursdays. Thank you guys, and see you soon.